This caramel cheesecake is the stuff dreams are made of. Not only is there a layer of caramel sauce on top of the cheesecake, but there's also a layer of caramel sauce in the cheesecake. It's rich, creamy, and has that wow factor. You are going to love it. Hi, I'm Lindsay from Life, Love, and Sugar, and today we're making a caramel cheesecake. So to get started, we're going to make our caramel sauce. It makes a good bit of caramel sauce. It uses the dry method. So we're going to pour our sugar into our pan. We're going to turn the heat on to about medium-high to kind of get things melting. You'll want to keep stirring the sugar up while it's melting, because if it starts to melt on the bottom and it's not getting stirred up, it'll actually burn on the bottom before the rest of the sugar has a chance to melt. Alright, so as the sugar on the bottom starts to melt, you really want to make sure that you're stirring it and keeping an eye on it so that it all starts to melt evenly. Alright, so once things start to get nice and clumpy, I like to turn the heat down a little bit so that the parts that really start to melt and liquefy first don't burn while the other bits and pieces are still melting. Alright, so you really do want to keep stirring so that this doesn't burn while it's melting. Some parts are going to melt quicker than others, so you want to keep stirring pretty quickly to keep things moving and help it melt evenly. Alright, so we're almost there. We've just got a few little bits left. Once this is all melted, we're going to go ahead and add our butter. You want it to be at least room temperature, if not warmer, because if it's too cool, this will turn into a rock. Alright, we're looking good. Let's go ahead and add our butter. I'm going to turn off the heat so it doesn't keep cooking. It may take a minute for it to all come together. It may look a little stringy, but it will come together. Alright, so now we can go ahead and add our cream. Again, you don't want this to be too cold. It's quite a large batch of caramel, so I'm adding the cream a little more slowly. Alright, so now that we have our caramel sauce made, we're actually going to divide it into two parts. Alright, and to the second bowl of caramel sauce, we're actually going to add a little bit of flour. This is the caramel sauce that'll go inside of our cheesecake, just sitting inside of our crust. If you were to add it to your cheesecake without the flour in it, it would just kind of dissolve into the cheesecake and wouldn't stay this separate, delicious layer. And stir this into our caramel sauce. Alright, so now we can set this aside for after we make our crust. Alright, so this cheesecake uses a graham cracker crust, so we're going to start with our graham cracker crumbs and add a little bit of brown sugar for some flavor and our melted butter. And then we'll go ahead and stir all this together. Alright, now grab a 9-inch springform pan. This has already been sprayed with baking spray. We are going to add a parchment round into the bottom. This will make it easier to remove the cheesecake from the bottom of the pan later, after we bake and cool it. And then we will add our crust. So this crust goes along the bottom and up the sides a little bit. So I'm going to spread it around in the pan to make it evenly dispersed and make it a little easier to press it into my pan. And then I like to use a cup with a nice corner like this to push my crust into the corners and edges of the cheesecake so that I get a nice corner there. Alright, so I'll go ahead and press against the sides of the pan. Alright, now we'll pop this in our oven to bake for about 8 to 10 minutes. Alright, so while our crust is baking, we can go ahead and start with our filling. We're going to start with room temperature cream cheese. We'll add some brown sugar and a little all-purpose flour. Pop this on our mixer and mix it until it's nice and smooth and creamy. Just make sure you use a low speed so you're not incorporating too much air into your batter. Now that that is nice and smooth and creamy, we can add our sour cream. And we'll add some vanilla extract. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and add our eggs one at a time. Alright, so now we have our cheesecake filling ready to go. Alright, so I like to give it one final stir just to make sure there's not any pockets of anything like sitting down in the bottom of the bowl or something like that. Alright, so now we will take our pre-baked crust and we'll add our caramel sauce. This is the caramel sauce that has the flour stirred into it. Okay, now we'll just let that kind of spread out into an even layer. It should be warm enough that it does that naturally, but if not, you could use some spatula to spread it around. And then we are going to add our filling right on top. You'll kind of notice that the caramel sauce might move around a little bit. That's okay. I just try to drizzle this evenly over it so that we don't get like a pool of filling in one place and a pool of caramel sauce in another. All right, so now we have our caramel sauce and our filling in our crust, and we're gonna go ahead and set this up for a water bath. There are all kinds of ways to set up for a water bath. I actually have a post about that on my site if you want to reference it. And I've used all different kinds of methods, but this one is currently my favorite. I have a silicone pan that I actually put this pan inside of, and so then I don't need aluminum foil or a crock pot bag that I've used in the past. This makes it super duper easy. Just set this right inside your pan, and now water cannot leak in, leak proof. Now we'll set this inside of our larger pan, and then we're gonna go ahead and fill it with water to create the water bath. This water can actually start to boil a little bit while it's in the oven, and so it'll kind of jump up, and it can actually jump over the sides if it comes up too high. So you only want it going up about halfway. Okay, so now we're all set up for our water bath, and we can go ahead and pop this in the oven and bake it. It'll bake for roughly an hour and a half. Ovens can vary, so it may be a little less or it may be a little more. All right, so once your cheesecake is fully baked and cooled, we're ready to remove it from the pan. Now, because we sprayed the sides of our pan, it shouldn't stick badly, and because we have parchment on the bottom, we should be able to loosen this pretty easily so that we can move it over to our serving platter. And your cheesecake should be cool and firm. You should be able to hold it without any problem to move it around. And we're gonna pull off the parchment paper, and we can set it right on our platter. Voila. All right, and now we're gonna take our caramel sauce that we had set aside earlier, that 1.5 cups, and hopefully it's cooled off a little bit and it's nice and drippable and spreadable, and we can actually put that on top of our cheesecake. All right, so now we have our caramel sauce, and if you want, you can add some little toffee bits or some other little decoration on top too. And there you have it, your final caramel cheesecake, ready to go, ready to impress your guests. It is so delicious. They will love it. For the full recipe, head over to lifeloveandsugar.com.